My name is Wayne Kelly. I'm the director of the Rural Development Institute. I've been the director there since the start of 2023. The Rural Development Institute is a research center on campus at Brandon University. We focus in on rural development topics, rural development issues, and policy. Primarily, we work in rural Manitoba, but we also work across rural Canada and beyond in international borders. We focus on rural issues, rural policy, and rural research. We're generalists. We look at a wide variety of topics from economic development and tourism to digital technologies, climate change, community well-being, capacity building. We sort of explore issues with community that they've either identified as priority items for themselves, or if we identify stuff in the research or policy that we see coming up and being an important topic that needs to either be addressed, or we can establish projects and sort of work on those specific items. One of the things that does set us apart is the variety of topics that we'll cover. Again, we sort of soup to nuts in terms of rural issues. We do a lot of action research, and I know the other research institutes do as well. So action research, that means that we're doing work with communities to address topics or items that they've identified, and we're actually trying to create change during the research process, as well as with the research findings. Another thing that we're sort of known for on campus is we have a lot of students working for us. Not only do we address research topics, but we build the capacity of research students. So right now we have a staff of 12. 10 of those are either current or former students from the master's program at Brandon University. So we work with those students, either current or former students, and we help build their skills around conducting community-based research, sort of in the wild, if you will. Learning in the classroom is essential, but it never goes the way that you expect on the ground and with communities. So we actually provide a lot of opportunities for students to build those research skills, research design, even down to grant writing, but also then they learn to work with communities. They learn to adapt when communities' needs change or timelines change. And then doing the research, the data collection, the analysis on the ground with community members is a really critical part, building those skills and sort of running research projects. The research at RDI absolutely reflects the priorities of both the communities and the community serving organizations. Digital technology is a key example. That's something that I'm really passionate about. I did my PhD on digital technology in rural communities. 20 years ago, when I started doing digital technology research in rural, it was how do you get connected to 1.5 megabit speeds, right? And now we're talking about how do you get connected to 50 megabits or even gigabit speeds. And so all of that has different implications for rural communities. But for me, the real interest in this one and how it's shifted over the years, somebody has to do the connectivity research, and we do that as part of our sort of core digital technology research in rural spaces. But we're really interested in what communities are doing with that research or with that connectivity now. So now that they've had connectivity for 10, 15, 20 years, what are the differences? What are the impacts that's happening? For communities that are just getting connected now to comparable speeds as their urban neighbors, how do they catch up? If their urban neighbors have been using this technology for 20 years, how does a rural community or a rural resident that just got connected last week, what do they need to learn? What do they need to do? That's been a really interesting sort of transition, moving away a little bit from the connectivity to definitely to the adoption and the skills piece. And we see that across the board. So it's the same in climate change. Adaptation is really a focus. Mitigation and sort of how do we reduce climate change. A few years ago, that might have been a bit more of a priority. It might still need to be a bit of a priority, but definitely the research and sort of the inquiries, the conversations we're having with rural communities are around what do we do, how do we adapt, whether it's to flooding or drought or infrastructure requirements. With a community-based research focus and an action research focus, honestly, if we didn't have those partnerships, we wouldn't be doing the research that we're doing. It would be more theoretical or, sort of pure research. But to do community-based research, we cannot do it without partnerships, either that's community partnerships or community serving organizations. For example, we're working with the Winnipeg Foundation to look at community foundations capacity around data collection. Same thing on our climate change project. We're working with EcoWest, which is an organization that's actually working across the prairies now on helping rural municipalities adapt to climate change. If we didn't have that partnership with them, we wouldn't be able to do the research exploring how our municipalities across Manitoba actually building in climate adaptation plans. Partnership with communities or community serving organizations is absolutely central to the research that we do and the impacts that we have. The impact of the research that we do depends on the partners that we have and the focus that we have. So a really good example of that is we've done a lot of immigration research at RDI over the last 25 years. We just did sort of an inventory, and as of 2023, we had more than 100 different materials related to immigration that was in our archives at RDI. So that's a topic that we've done a lot of research on, and we're continuing to do a lot of research with. Now, the policy changes that are happening in Canada right now over the last year and a half have directly impacted sort of the research that we're doing and the impact that that research is having. So 3 years ago, it was all about how to be a welcoming community. How do communities bring in newcomers and help them retain newcomers, especially in rural spaces? Now, increasingly, that's shifting to how do both communities and how do newcomers navigate the changing visa requirements, the changing reality as workforce availability of newcomers continues to shrink. That starts to impact other issues in rural spaces. So the research that we do really depends on sort of what's happening in those communities and in a broader societal scale. We do a lot of volunteer work with students, so there's an opportunity for students to come in and volunteer. I teach in the rural development department, and I often teach sort of practical skills courses to help students get that community-based experience for the methods that they've learned in the master's program. So we do have a lot of master's students that are sort of involved in one way or another with RDI. We've hired other masters and undergrads from across the faculties. So definitely keep an eye out when the job postings go out and if there's volunteering. So there's lots of engagements for students. We have webinars, we are hoping to get into podcasting, and we have other newsletters that go out, and we get lots of feedback on that in terms of inquiring about the research projects that we have ongoing or the research opportunities. And for community serving organizations, we connect with them the same sort of way as communities, either at events or through some of our knowledge mobilization efforts ourselves. We've worked with municipalities directly on investment assessment, immigration. We're doing it right now through some climate change and digital technology projects. That's something we also want to get better at as well, though, is making sure that the materials that's coming out of our research are actually accessible and usable by rural communities. So an initiative that we're doing right now, I think that's really tailored to that, is we're doing a lot of work around capacity building. How do rural communities know what skills they need to do a project, and at what time do they need those skills? So we're starting to work with communities on a regular basis to understand the activities that they're going through and to understand what sort of community development skills are needed to take that next step. And so we're starting to release materials, and we hope to release guides and toolkits and training in the near future around that topic. So stay tuned. Primarily, we are project funded. So that means we have 12 staff in the office right now, and 11 of those are funded by project. We apply either to research funding or to other funding so that we can get projects, and then we work with communities to do activities to design research. And so the bulk of our funding comes from those project sources. We wouldn't be here without the support from administration and from Brandon University and from both faculty and administrators on campus. It's been a huge success over the years as we've done a lot of research on a lot of different rural topics, and we hope to expand and continue that. The dean and the staff and the faculty have been fantastic, and the Office of Research Services here on campus. So we do a lot of work both with finance and with granting and knowledge mobilization support, and so we're working hand in hand with that office to actually identify projects, apply for projects, and then administer and implement those projects. The other research centers on campus are critical as well. So we share a lot of learning, share a lot of what works, doesn't work. Sometimes we'll actually flow projects each other's way as either the topic or the expertise that comes in is sort of better suited for one center or another. So it's great to have that type of collegial working relationship with the other research centers. And that lets us do a lot more on campus in terms of rural research. And I think that's actually an important thing to note, is that on campus, there are 4 research centers that sort of collaborate regularly. They're all rural focused. So it's fantastic that we have this university with the strength of rural research across these different rural institutes or rural research centers and across the faculty on campus. I want to keep building on our action-based research, our engagement with communities, creating impact while we're doing the research as well as with the findings. We're really sort of getting our heads around the fact that a lot of the research that we're doing, whether it's capacity building or immigration, it's important that it's an iterative sort of cyclical-based research focus, so that we're not sort of focusing on this topic and then moving on, but we need to understand over time, how does immigration change? Over time, what is the capacity needed for communities, and does that change? Digital technologies have changed over the last 20 years. They're going to change a lot more over the next 20, even over the next 5. And so at RDI, we're setting up pillars of research focus that will really emphasize sort of how do we understand this topic in relation to rural spaces, and then how do we understand that as that issue evolves or as the communities sort of grow in that space. And so we really want to make sure that we're building up the long-term engagement and investment in these research areas to support communities in rural Manitoba, in rural Canada, and even internationally.